Hello, everyone, and welcome to a Webinar Wednesday again. Hi, Keith. Hi, hello. Instead of Keith,
Hi, everyone.
And we were just discussing before we went live on the air about the fact that we're looking at some changing tiers again with coronavirus, and it's vaccine time potentially for some people. So, what's your thoughts on the changes in the tiers just now?
Well, for me, we're actually dropping a tier because I'm in Renfrewshire, so we've been in tier 4. So the difference is the shops will be open. So I've missed my shopping. I don't think there's really going to be much else changing, right enough, but at least people will be able to get out and shop. I think that's been a big thing for people leading up to Christmas.
Yeah, it's just that idea of hope, isn't it? Aye. So nobody seems to be going up a tier. Everybody seems to be staying the same or going down a tier. And that's despite the fact that I know that in Aberdeen and Aberdeenshire the numbers have been creeping up over the last couple of weeks. So we'll just have to, I just keep an eye on things, and I guess we're just again always hoping that people are paying attention and being thoughtful about these things. So they've just started doing the vaccines.
Yeah.
So they're going to start with the over 80s, they said, and healthcare workers. So it'll be quite a while until anybody gets, in a lot of other areas, gets an actual access to a vaccine. What do you make about the whole the furor online about whether or not it's safe and how quick it's been developed?
It's quite hard, isn't it? Because I've been listening to a lot, obviously, on the news, and there's a lot of people are saying that they wouldn't get the vaccine, and then there's a lot of people who are desperate to get it. It's quite different, isn't it? But I think when you're listening, because normally a vaccine will take maybe up to 10 years to develop properly by the time they've done the testing and that. So this one has been quite quick, and I think that's caused concern with people. But it's difficult one to call, but there has been a lot of people working on it, and then I think they had a good start because of the SARS vaccine to kind of work on as well. So
yeah, so I think that's what they're saying, isn't it? It's a variation on stuff they've been working on before, because there've been other SARS type of outbreaks, so they've recognised that that's been a serious thing to work on. And I guess I think it's good to have some skepticism in terms of, wondering how things are developed and asking questions, because I think that's healthy. But I suppose the thing that I feel frustrates me is that, in line with more of the rubbish that we got fed around about Brexit and all that stuff, there's some people that seems to be deliberately putting out just nonsense that it's going to contain microchips that's going to,
I know, the conspiracy theories. They're going to track us forever now.
Yes.
Well, I personally think it's a good thing. I'm just looking to get back to some sort of normality. It's been a hard year for everybody, but then everybody's got their own opinions.
Yeah, and it's important that people feel calm and that they've had their concerns listened to. I think, guess with all this stuff, isn't it? It's not for anybody to say your concerns aren't valid, but yeah, like I say, and I think it's fine for folks to say that they're worried about it, and I think a lot of people, are worried about it. But I think the bit of it that really frustrates me is folk who are deliberately stirring up that anxiety for no reason. It's different if you're asking the questions.
Yeah, and I think that's what it is. It's just about asking the questions, isn't it? If you've got any kind of queries. And
we've got a you dudes. So so if anybody, that reminds us as well. If anybody's got any questions, any thoughts on this or anything else, please feel free to just drop us a line while we're on. So you can do it on Facebook or on our YouTube channel. So that's probably enough COVID stuff for now, is it? 'Cause it just goes on for.
It seems to be the top topic these days. COVID.
It does indeed. I'd like it tomorrow, please. So Keith saying he'd like like the vaccine. Yeah, I
Tomorrow.
mean,
It'd be interesting to see how other people feel about the vaccine, though, because I mean, I've been talking to different people online, obviously, and it's just kind of mixed. There's a real kind of mix, because I thought when it first came out, everybody was going to be pro, no, the vaccine, great. But then when I've been talking to different people, so it's quite interesting to see.
It is.
Hear other people's views.
I know, and we have got that. So we've got that thing about some people have said that they didn't want to cooperate with lockdown because it's like, oh, it's interfering with my freedom. It's not that deadly. And then they say, I want to get back to my normal life, and I want to, to earn a living. And then when you say, well, good, we've got the vaccine, so you can do that now. Oh no, I'm not taking the vaccine. It's like, well, everything that could do it to actually get us back to normal, you're sabotaging a wee bit, really. So anyway, we nearly got off of COVID there for a minute. So other good stuff that's going on. So Keith and Michael did the Stay Up Late music session.
So I heard that went really well.
Yes, I was up in Shetland, so unfortunately I was catching up with somebody, so I couldn't catch it at the time, but I caught a bit of it afterwards. And it seemed like, again, sort of good mix of different tunes, and they're always looking for other new music. And we've got Michael joining us. It must be Wednesday. He's there.
Hi, Michael.
And what a session that was. So if either Michael or Keith want to share any of their highlights from that session, whether it be the banter or the tunes, feel free to do so.
And you can still, anybody that did miss that can still catch up on our Facebook page and the YouTube channel. So
yeah, it's there for anybody to have a look at, have a listen to, and again, it's another way to connect to different artists, different music. Because again, artists are struggling at this time. Sometimes we connect.
And I think it's like music from all over the world as well, isn't it? It's not just the UK, so it's.
Yes, it is indeed. Not Tuesday, Michael. So that's a good link into the fact that Michael was on doing his Tuesday talks yesterday as well. So again, you can go on and watch that anytime if you want to hear what Michael was chatting about yesterday. So other stuff. So we've got the next one of those Stay Up Late Friday night things is on the 8th of January.
Oh, yeah.
So if anybody's got any music they want to share, they can feel free to send it in to us.
Yeah, we'll get some information out about that and share that on Facebook and their other social media platforms.
Yes. So other stuff that we've been doing in conjunction with Stay Up Late, we've had a bit of a music workshop, an online music workshop, which was a real experiment.
How's that going?
Yeah, well, it was interesting. We did it with No Labels, No Walls and B-Mix, who are all about sort of inclusive music for folk with disabilities, and we'd had a bit of a session already looking at developing some lyrics for a song, and the idea is that it's going to maybe be an anthem that we can use for the Citizen Fest next year.
Oh, fantastic.
So after we'd done a bit of that, we decided we would do a little bit of how could we come up with the music for it. And way back in the good old days before the pandemic, we had obviously Stay Up Late had been involved in doing a kind of like an in-person music workshop. Folk could try different musical instruments and just have a bit of a play about. So we thought, how could we do this online when we haven't got access to the instruments? So what we tried was there's quite a lot of free apps, but I had a look about, and there's one called Music Maker Jam, and I chose that one because a lot of the stuff was free, and also it's available on. You can have it on Android, on iPhone, and on sort of like just your standard laptop as well. So that was quite good to just try. So we encouraged people to download it, have a play about with different musical styles, and then
is that a free app, Alistair?
It's a free app, so the app is free, and then you can choose up to 6 musical styles from any of the paid things, and you can add up to 6 of them on for free. If you're wanting any other musical styles after that, it's like about £1 or £2 per musical style. But to be honest, it does more. It does more things than I was able to to do, but it was really quite interesting. So you could, you could add in different riffs and beats. You could change the melody, change the auto tune, change the speed. You could add and take away different instruments, and so we experimented with a few different music styles, and then speeds, and then what we did was we used that as a basis for the style of the tune, and then Steve from BMix and also Riku from No Labels, No Walls. The grunge style suited you, Alistair. Yes, we ended up going for grunge. It was. I did kind of steer folk in the grunge direction rather than the poppy tunes, but yeah, everybody went for it. So that'd be an interesting style for next year.
Look forward to hearing the end product.
Yeah, so it was just again another experiment in how do you keep lots of people, because there's like 19 people in the room. How do you get people to share ideas, to not feel frustrated, because collaborating to put something together, or taking things away from the lyrics and adding new bits and deciding which drum sounds made sense and things like that. So it was a challenge, but I think folk really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I can imagine they would.
So and obviously, so that's good stuff. So we're going to do a little bit more of that. No Labels, No Walls on Monday. A bit more development of that. So anybody is welcome to join. 5 o'clock till 6 o'clock. And if you go to No Labels, No Walls, they've got the Action Monday Zoom link on there, and anybody can just join if you want to be part of that.
And you can share that on Facebook for people. The link so people want to join.
We'll do that. So, and being December, you've got another news brief coming out.
Yeah, it should hopefully be out tomorrow. So we've made it a wee bit kind of Christmas theme with Christmas coming up. We thought people need a wee bit of cheering up, so got a wee bit of a Christmassy theme to it. So we've got a wee recipe for Christmas cookies. Kind of make your own decorations. So just a few activities for people to follow. So
yes,
I'll be doing them.
Yes. No, it's a tough time of year, isn't it, for a lot of folk, particularly this year. And just that whole thing. It's interestingly, we've got as one of our guests next week, we're going to have Michael Byrne, who runs Lived Experience of Trauma Support. And so I think that's going to be a relevant time to be thinking about how we make sure that we think about the best ways to support folks that are not doing so well. And also just to say as well that as part of over Christmas and New Year, we usually stop, and we'll be stopping most of the stuff we do, but we are still going to do a festive Friday on Christmas Day. Just we had a speak about it at Feel Good Fridays, and we said, especially some people weren't going to be meeting up with anybody, for Christmas dinner and stuff, just with the risks. We felt we'll give that a bash. So we're going to have a little bit of something. Not everything's stopping.
Yeah, a wee bit of cheer. So wear your Christmas jumpers, your Christmas hats.
Yeah, the horror of Christmas jumpers. I know. Some absolute belters. I've actually got there was a Christmas thing we went to. I think it was a Vias AGM we went to, and I managed to get a Christmas sprout hat, which I'm Christmas sprout, and nobody could work out what it was. I've since made it into a sporran for my kilt for a Christmas breakout, so I don't think I can wear it as a hat anymore. Anyway, suitably random ramblings today. We're also going to be doing some in the new year, we're going to be looking at more the rights and equalities work on building social connections and stuff. And and the other thing we're thinking for the new year is trying to get people's stories of support, what's made a difference to you, how folk worked with you. So come on with your support worker or the manager of your service or whatever, and just talk together a bit about what's made a difference, so that we can share some of those good stories as well. Because we just don't want to just hear when things go wrong, because oftentimes people contact us when they're maybe not getting the rights met and the right type of support. Okay, shall we invite our guest on?
Yeah.
So, hi, Dee.
Hi.
Hi, Dee.
Sorry, no Christmas sprout hat.
No, there we go. I should have warned you for a bit of that.
I do have a Christmas jumper. I could have done it, but I ran out of time.
So Dee, you've now gone from CCPS to Iris. Congrats on the new role.
Thank you. Yes, I am 6 days in, so please don't ask me any difficult questions.
Oh, we've got a raft of different. What's your favourite strategic objective? I'm joking.
I could probably answer that one, but that's very sad.
There you go, because it's probably fresh from the interview. So before we start talking about the difference in role and stuff, how are you doing generally with the whole everything that's going on and the COVID world, and how's it affected you?
Do you know, I was just thinking about this as I heard you talk about people who are not doing so well, and like how you keep kind of linked up in this digital world, because I think I really miss, I used to do lots of things in person, lots of workshops, out meeting people, and like digital's great, but it's not got quite the same feeling. So, and I don't know, it's probably the same as yourselves and everybody else who's listening in, I'm getting really fed up now. So a bit of Christmas cheer is the thing.
Yeah, Zoom's okay, but it's not real life, is it?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like
the online stuff works really well some cases, but you do miss that face-to-face and just meeting people. And like you do, you think we're all getting a bit fed up now. We're just waiting to get back to that, where we can actually go and meet people and interact properly.
And just do the sort of, the sort of hanging out stuff that you do at work, and like when you have a coffee and you have a bit of a sort of ordinary chat, and that's super important, I've now discovered, because now you have to have a meeting, and then people are like, oh, it's a meeting, it'll be about a thing. So I think that's the thing I'm most looking forward to at the end of all of this, is getting back to seeing folk, and also, actually meeting people in real life, knowing how tall they are, for example, because at the moment I have no idea.
Yes. No, I mean, I was just saying, I did my first bit of proper face-to-face work of any description up in Shetland the last couple of weeks.
Oh,
and
nice.
it was genuinely heartwarming, just how, just that human contact, that interpersonal stuff about reading, talking about difficult stuff, but that body language, and if you can convince folk over the online, you can have talks about different things, but especially if you're asking somebody to go with you and trust you on difficult stuff, I think it's not as good, is it? It's not.
Yeah, not at all. Yeah, I think that's exactly it. It's very difficult to read and see how things are landing with folk. And yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Okay. So and then you've changed, because how long were you at CCPS? It was a long time, wasn't it?
I was at CCPS for almost 10 years.
Wow.
So I arrived to do a 1-year programme, and I completely outstayed my welcome and stayed for 10 years. But I had 4 jobs, so that was really, really cool to have that variance. And I've been at Iris 6 days, so I'll try really hard not to talk only about providers, which is what my last job used to be. But I can't promise.
Yeah.
And how different is your new role, Dee, to what you were doing in CCPS to what you're doing now in Iris? I know you've only been in 6 days, but is there a big difference in the role that you're going to be doing?
I am wondering if any of my colleagues are listening to this going, is this what you think she's doing? No. So in CCPS, I represented, supported and championed voluntary sector care and support providers. So a lot of what I was doing was about making the case for why voluntary sector support was really good. It's not always really good, but why it was a good way to help people live good lives. And I spent a lot of time, I don't know whether to say this quite so frankly, arguing with people about that.
Yes.
Whereas IRIS is about figuring out the evidence. So how do we know what works and what doesn't? It's not about a particular sector, it's about everybody that's around the person to try and help them live that good life. So I think it's a good shift from trying to kind of understand what makes for good support as opposed to arguing for it. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Yes, it's hugely exhausting, that whole process of arguing, isn't it? I do think that I've often described it as the House of Commons style of negotiation. One person takes a position and the other person argues about it, and it sometimes becomes more important to win the argument than actually coming to the same page.
Yeah, guilty. But it is interesting when you think about, and one of the things I'm really interested in, and I'm hoping I'll get the chance to look at it in IRIS, is like, how do people change their minds? And I'm not sure when people argue with me that's how I change my mind. As soon as someone starts saying, no, Dee, it's like this, and being very kind of argumentative, I think I'm more likely to say, yeah, I don't believe you, and I'm not convinced. So, yeah.
Yeah, fixed positions don't really work, do they? It's that thing about, I always try and get people to say, right, before we start getting into how we make it happen, let's just define what we think good will look like. How do we know that that's going to be good, and then let's measure how we're going about it and saying, is this more or less likely to get us anywhere near this or not? Because it's sometimes embarrassingly obvious if we say, well, we think we need to be trusting each other and we need to be open, and yet we're bashing about each other's heads with sticks.
Exactly. And which one do you remember? You remember the being hit with sticks metaphorically. You don't remember the nice words. So no, you're spot on. Yeah. Yes.
So it's interesting as well. I guess IRIS does that work, and we've been as part of the North East Scotland. We've started a support and wellbeing co-op in the last 2 years. It's 2 years this Friday. We've actually got an AGM on Friday afternoon. What a time for an AGM. We're bound to have lots of folk turning up online anyway, but in the middle of a pandemic, starting off with no funding, a community kind of self-employed, plus they're folk who have more than half of our members have a long-term health condition. So I'm chuffed that we've managed to do that, and just expand on that. And we've done some stuff with iHub, with Des and that, and Anne Connor from Outside the Box, looking at that in the market. So it'll be interesting to think about maybe whether IRIS is part of that with iHub, some of that learning from different micro support models, and how we, especially in the middle of a pandemic, how we grow that diversity, that real community options. Because one of the options, for example, one of the women who offers support, because of her health condition, she doesn't offer great long periods of support, and she doesn't work full time. And the support she was providing to somebody was, because she was a mental health nurse previously, she had a lot of skills. So there was a small package of care, but it was quite complex, and nobody wanted to do it because it was rural and it was a small amount of hour. So it just doesn't fit. Whereas she's just in the corner, she can do it. It fits with her. So it's not like it's even one or the other. It really complements. So you're not having folk having to do lost leader stuff that doesn't actually work.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons I know why we say market, because we have to, because it's something we understand. One of the things I think about it is, well, one, it's not really a market because there's usually just one purchaser, and I won't go off on that one because everybody's heard me talk about that before 8 million times. But how do we, I think it was Des actually who said to me, how do you have like an ecology of support, so like an ecosystem, so that there's plenty of room for all these different types of provision and support, so that people can get what they need, and also so that the people who are working can have good jobs So it sounds like your example there is a great fit. That gives the worker a good job that uses her skills, but also manages her tiredness or her condition, and also the supported person gets this mutually beneficial support. So that's exactly the kinds of things I think I agree we need to be growing, and trying to make the context easier for that to happen. I guess that's the bit I'm quite interested in. You know, what do you need to do around and about people to make it easy?
No,
it's something that's been discussed for years, though, isn't it? It's like, because if you think of way back, I remember when I first started kind of in the support, kind of working for providers and that, and it was always that one support doesn't fit all, and how do you kind of pull that apart? No, and it's still kind of like that. Some of the conversations you still have with people, you know, it's like they're trying to fit everybody into the same box. You know, this is what we're offering, this is the support,
and this
and
is it.
So it's just that challenge, isn't it? Trying to.
Yes, if only there was an organisation that could build the evidence base.
There you go.
So I'm being slightly facetious, but that is one of the areas I think that we could assist in. Is helping to, because I think there's not a huge amount of formal research about this because it's quite new. But I think there's other kinds of finding out that some of my colleagues are very expert in, about finding out rapidly as things are developing and capturing that and sharing that. So colleagues and I have a very kind of similar approach to that. What's happening now, not what happened 10 years ago in the literature, because I guess we can't wait around. People are waiting to get support that works for them, and I think we need to learn as we go along.
Yes. And so we've got that, and in amongst questions about there's Keith Etherington from William Ray. We've lost Keith. We've lost Keith, but we've gained June, so that's a trade. And person-centered support has to be person-centered support person too.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, absolutely. So so Keith's enjoying being able to
on the other side.
Is it Keith? Are you being tricky? Because you're not listening.
Yes, he's doing a little bit of heckling from this side. No, it's fine. But yeah, absolutely that I often think it's the confidence for us to let go of that fear that this is how it's been done, and anything is a threat, rather than saying, well, look, you know, what's good and working about what we've got at the moment, what could be better, what are the challenges, and how can we all get in the same room? I mean, we did a session about risk a couple of years ago within Control, and trying to get it, you know, providers were quite happy to talk about risk and opportunity. Individuals with getting support were quite happy to talk about that. But when you got up as far as trying to get commissioners to talk about it, nobody would talk about it openly, because it was like they thought everybody was, you know, analysing every word and what if, you know, and it had to be, unless we're all prepared to start talking about that and really saying what makes it difficult, then we're always going to be suspicious of one another, and it's always going to be guarded, and you know, and really openness.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I'm not here to tell a sort of Pollyanna-ish story about lockdown and COVID and the effect it had on support and on support people, but I think one of the things it kind of did teach us is that we can do it. Like, I met some incredibly resilient support workers, for example, who'd done this fantastic workarounds for keeping in touch with people who experienced mental health problems in like really acute lockdown, who felt super disconnected, and they'd had the kind of freedom to practice the way, you know, with skill and with like being totally centered on the person. And they were doing things like, you know, chatting through the window, or even just leaving someone a little gift and a note so they knew they weren't alone outside their door if they were isolating. And it's shown us we can do it. And I think it's shown a light for me on how social care at its best, things social care and support. I don't know which word to use, to be honest. I'll go with support.
Yeah,
and tell me in the comments if it's the wrong one. Is kind of actually got a much more, dare I say it, grown up view of risk that says the question is, what does a good life look like? And a good life might not be 100% safe. And I think we've seen that in that sort of debate about visiting in care homes, the opening of day services and things. my clinical colleagues will be having a fit now, but it's a very linear view of well-being. It says, instead of kind of weighing up and saying, actually, what's the cost of people being isolated, and is there a way we can manage it?
Yes, because that's the thing, isn't it? It's not about what we can protect people from, but we can protect people from having a decent life and being connected.
Totally.
And there's risks all around, but there's opportunities all around. And one of the things we've recognised as well is that some folk have pushed themselves out of their comfort zones. I mean, how many of us beforehand were happy about video chatting? Some were, but not so much, for a lot of us. And so some folk have genuinely really tackled a lot of their anxieties. Some folk with disabilities in particular who were just like, there's no way you'll ever get me to do that. And it's like that thing about necessity being the mother of invention.
Folks just did it. But that's extraordinary. And I do think that's something to be celebrated as well, that because it's not easy to step out of how you work or how you live at all. And it's kind of opened up wider connections, certainly for what I do. Like it's given me the opportunity to connect with people in Australia who do really brilliant work on changing social care systems. And I don't know if I would have done that if I wasn't stuck on a screen with tiny little boxes in my headset for months, because I was completely allergic to digital engagement prior to this. But so I'm going to say it, and I'm always saying it. It's not straightforward, is it? There has been some real benefits. And
I think that balance.
More about work. Oh, sorry, June, you go.
No, it's okay. It's just getting that balance, isn't it? I mean, the kind of positives, because some of the people I've spoke to as well had never used any kind of digital, and they're saying they've built really good skills now in using digital. In some meetings that they couldn't go to before because of travelling, etc., they can now do it. Yeah, so it's just getting that balance, isn't it? But then on the other hand, we're talking to people that, like what we were talking about earlier, that miss that face-to-face, and they're worried that when we go back to that kind of normal, that they're not going to get those face-to-face meetings anymore, that they're going to do it all digitally. So it's just trying to get the balance right as we go forward and into that new normal.
Whatever that might be.
Whatever that might be. But for everyone, I think. But
like, how do we make sure digital is a tool, not a driver? I think is the question for me, because you don't want it to be used as a cost-saving measure, which I've heard it talked about as being. But I guess we're all coming back to is the support centered around what the person needs. And I can see a situation where someone might prefer digital engagement. Someone doesn't come into your house, it's not so intrusive. Maybe that's easier. You can kind of manage the environment a bit. But if we're able to kind of see it as one of many things that might build a good life, not as a kind of easy.
But then that would be the person's choice, whether that was something that would benefit them going forward. So, and that needs to be taken into account.
Yeah, totally.
So Keith's come back. It's about having the right balance. Make the most of the small things too. Ensuring we celebrate the good stuff. Yes. Not getting stuck into that. Yeah, I think there's that transactional thing that a lot of things have got into in the past about we have to, thinking that we have to define what everything looks like and really control it rather than let it be a bit more fluid. Try some stuff. Does this work for you? Does it not work for you? I think a lot of what good support looks like is a bit of letting go. It's about letting folk try things, letting folk explore, letting folk and celebrating the fact that you've tried it rather than getting anxious about maybe something not working exactly according to plan.
Yeah. And I think that could be really helpfully reflected if you think out to the wider systems around care and support, because you spoke earlier about risk and commissioners being really frightened about risk. And legit, if I was a commissioner, I'd be worried that someone would misinterpret me and there'd be a big problem and a terrible misunderstanding and I'd end up on the papers or whatever. So I do get it, but how do we become experimental all the way up to say, actually, I'm okay if this attempt at trying to contract differently doesn't work perfectly. We are agreed that we still want to try it because we want to give people the flexibility. And I guess there's a question there for organisations like Iris and all of us, but how do you actually build that rather than just talk about it? It's dead easy to talk about it, but what do we have to do in groups together to have enough trust to do good work?
Yeah, and I think that's that thing about getting around the table to start with and being honest about the anxiety, and that's where we started to. That's where we started to get to with the discussions that we had about risk in a real life. Was we said, we've got commissioners saying to support organisations, please be imaginative and creative, and don't just chunter out the same stuff. We want good stories of success. But then you've got maybe support providers saying, I got a glimpse of something where somebody appears to have been dropped like a hot potato when something went wrong. So go and be really clear what you mean by, how far we can go and how we can keep a good dialogue going, the stuff that worries us and the stuff that we'd like to do more of. And then I guess so that providers can say, this is what we'd like to see more of, and this is how we'd like to have a dialogue about it. And then people with lived experience saying, this is the real difference to how I experience support in terms of when I get that creativity, when I get that flexibility about how it's delivered, and just the difference it makes to your life and your feelings of control. And we got some of that, but we didn't get all of it. And I think it's just keeping that dialogue going.
And I think being quite clear-eyed about, I'm trying very hard not to say the thing I always say about systems, but being super clear-eyed about what we do in terms of the environment that everybody works in that leads to things we don't want to see, or leads to stuff that we say we don't want. So that's a really classic example where you get a contract that's super specified, but you're asking for innovation. And I guess everybody knows this from care and support, like direct support to people. You know that if somebody is really angry and maybe destroying things, they're doing that because of the environment they're in. Usually there's something going wrong.
Yeah, there's always something behind.
Yeah. And we need to create those all the way up, I think, and kind of say to it, because it did come up in COVID quite a bit. There was a stated driver that said, oh, we'll resource providers to do all this COVID flexible work, no problem. But 9 months later, the money hadn't come through for lots of boring technical reasons that I won't bore everybody with on this webinar. So we had a system that drove against what we wanted to see. And I guess that's part of the conversation for me is are we really clear-eyed about the things we say and the things we do and whether the two work against each other? And somebody much cleverer than me put it, a bad system beats a good person every time, or a system is perfectly designed to give the results it gives. We kind of need to attend to that rather than making it the individual's problem or an individual organisation's problem. It's a shared problem. But it's easy to talk about and much harder to do.
It is, isn't it? And keeping things sustainable in the long term as well, because quite often we see pockets of really good practice around about individual leadership where people help to get that confidence to explore and to do things differently, and then they move on and all of a sudden the vacuum and it's back to square one. It's not like I always hope that that there's a level of progression that we say, we've learned that, so we're not going to start from ground zero again as soon as there's a change in personnel. But sometimes it's just like, oh well, but what about all that knowledge? What about all that experience? What about all of that? But it's like, oh no, we're doing it this way now, and that's quite frustrating for people because we obviously get queries in, and we can prove. I think we can prove without a shadow of a doubt of the difference in people's life experience and the productivity if you go about it the right way. And it's not rocket science, but it still seems to be hard to get that embedded.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, do we need different kinds of leaders? This is what my former colleague Emma might say. So she did some work called Embracing the Chaos, which was kind of supporting people to think about what being a distributed leader is, or a non-positional leader. So you might not be the boss, but you're trying to persuade a group of people along to work together. And part of me just thinks maybe we need to be doing that slightly differently, so that when there is a change in leadership, the baseline's still there. The person's still coming in with the same ethos, like, how do we solve this together? Not how can I get locked into, I think you said at the beginning of the call, locked into that game of trying to be the person who wins. Because I don't think anybody goes into this kind of work for that. I think everyone comes in to do the best for the person, and then life and institutions and structures get in the way, and that is, very, very difficult to work against unless you've got those leaders.
Yes.
Sorry, I was distracted by
levels, it's encouraging people who are staff working directly with people to be leaders themselves as well, rather than the traditional top-down leadership model.
Because they know they're doing the work. They're the people who know. And how do we create the right kind of culture where that expertise is seen and celebrated and used, frankly, because it's expertise that I think we're sometimes missing.
Yeah, definitely, and we see that things bottleneck, don't they? Because like as part of the whole answering the sort of COVID sort of crisis response in the middle of summer, I did a bit of work in a care home, looking at trying to turn things around, and one of the areas was basically like it was management was still felt that they had to take forward all the ideas and manage all the suggestions and solve all the problems. And what I did was just create a little bit of a shift so that people could record not only what was an issue, but how they could manage it and what permission and what authority they needed in order to take it forward. And then just try and build that around. And it made quite a difference to how very quickly people felt about the idea of putting forward suggestions and taking things forward, rather than just alerting a member of management and standing back.
Yes, and then it falling into a big black hole. I'm taking notes, so I'm not that person.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, no, it's a little bit predictable, isn't it? Always leadership at all levels. Yes, absolutely. There we go. So, in any other plans for yourself? Obviously, you're very, very new in the door and stuff like that.
So try not to have too many plans. Well, actually, at the moment, my plan is and has been to kind of hear from as many different people, so in Iris and out with Iris, about what they think about us, and particularly for next year. And I'm going to steal 5 minutes for a quick plug to say that in January I'm going to run some open sessions on Zoom for people to come along and just basically say, what do we need in terms of building evidence, supporting practice, and changing the system, which are the three things that we try to do in 21-22, because I feel like COVID has really changed things for people, and we could just make assumptions from last year, from pre-pandemic, about what we need to be doing, but we'd really welcome people's views from everywhere. Unpaid carer, supported person, social worker, support worker, chief exec, whoever. What kinds of things could we assist with around understanding the formal research, gathering research and learning as it goes along, or just even what the priorities are, I think, for the sector, because I think it's going to be a really challenging, quite a difficult year as we try and recover. And, obviously I don't want to say the B word, but Brexit and all these sort of external things that will come and press on social care and support. And we're really keen to be fitting in with what people are needing. So I don't know, somebody's got my email address, but drop me a line.
Will you share the information on that day that we can share around, because we can share that in social media?
Yes,
great. Thank you, Keith. I'll drop you a line, June, just with some info and booking and things. But one of the good things about digital, there's no limits on how many people want to turn up. So it'd be great if we can get those out, because we want to be informed by what's needed, like all organisations. You need to do what's needed.
I mean, that's the important thing. We were talking about that earlier, just maybe getting some support, and there's people that are that we work for, their support staff and that, to come along and tell us how it's been for them as well. So we're getting that information. So there'll be positive things that have happened, and then not so good things that have happened. that's the kind of things that we're hearing at the moment. So
it's good to know about both, though, isn't it? I tend to only hear about problems. I don't know about you.
No, it's good to hear the both sides. It's, because I mean there is a lot of positive stuff that's happened out there, and then there's the stuff that's not so good. So it's just kind of getting both of that.
Yeah, I mean, so some of the stuff has been about folks that have gone the extra mile to help people to connect digitally, for example, because you know, it's all very well to hand somebody a tablet and say, there you've got an internet connection, but
it's not that straightforward, is it? Yeah.
And for some folks, we've had multiple attempts at practicing which way to swipe the button to not cut yourself off, how to turn your camera on, all these kind of things that can make you just go, oh, you know what, this is just never going to happen for me.
Yeah. It's a steep skill if you've never used it. And also, I mean, I know everyone's alive to this, that there's a whole bunch of people who can't afford to be digitally connected, don't have Wi-Fi, trying to access things on a phone, and like that's I mean, I know Scottish Government's doing some work around that at the moment, but that's a massive gap if we're expecting any kind of engagement, because it's not cheap for people, and it's not easy.
Yeah, we've still got a few devices for people who are either living at home with kids, or if they're care experienced under 26, have a few devices in Scotland. And I know that in other parts of Scotland there's folk who've got bundles for people who are
so people can get started, and that's amazing.
Target different areas, and that because otherwise people are more cut off than ever if they don't have and it's not just about having the device, it's about having the Wi-Fi and that as well.
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay, so that's us at quarter two. Any final thoughts, anybody? June, do you want to start us off with a final thought for today?
Just feeling a bit more positive this week, I think. Just as we were talking at the beginning, the tier, we've dropped down a tier, which is quite good, so be able to get out and about a wee bit more, and then with the vaccine as well, so it's just things are looking a wee bit more positive. Looking forward to Christmas. I know it's not going to be the same, but I think we just make the best of it, don't we, and do what we can. We've got a few wee things coming up as well. The 23rd, I think, is the next webinar. Where are we? 9th today. 2 weeks, the 23rd webinar Wednesday is going to be a wee bit more festive as well. So
yes, a wee Christmas get together.
A wee bit of Christmas cheer.
Thanks, June. Dee, any final thoughts?
Probably, other than to say, listen, thank you very much for this opportunity for a super new green as grass person to come and talk a bit about COVID and Iris. But I think maybe similarly, Jane, feeling a wee bit more hopeful. I think we could all use a rest if we can get it over the Christmas break, even if it's going to be quiet, and get ourselves ready for next year's challenges. So just to say thank you. It was really great to chat to you today.
Brilliant.
Great having you.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks for coming on and being part of it. And of course, anybody can look it up later on and come back to us. And if you do want to share your details about stuff next year, look at this. Keith's coming back, our lovely guest this week. There we go.
Thanks, Keith.
Thanks for that. And perfect. And we look forward to just staying connected and being June Dunlop. Look, I shouldn't encourage him by putting he's singing baked potato.
I like what he means by that, because I usually do the comments and Keith's usually on this side.
All right.
So we're switched roles this week.
He's just causing mayhem and chaos as usual.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thanks again for coming, and here's to a positive start to next year, and hope we can stay connected with Iris and everything that's going on, so we can keep moving things forward.
Absolutely.
All right. See ya.
Thank you.
Bye.